and thank you for your feedback. It always excites me to read your comments, what you have to say about our various interviews. And this last one about the power sector, it paints a picture of a people who are hopeful, not happy with what has been, and expecting something better. Now, that leads me to what we're talking about today. A people who are hopeful, not happy with what has been, and looking towards the future. In 2009, the federal government declared an amnesty program for people who had been agitating in the Niger-Delta for development. That program, the Presidential Amnesty Program, has been in existence since then, giving birth to a couple of interventions of government like the NDDC and the Local Content Board. Has that program lived up to its billing? Many ask the question. Over 30,000 agitators, ex-agitators, under that program, going through different forms of rehabilitation programs, training programs, in order to get re-assimilated into the society and contributing their quota to the development of the region. There are some who will say that that program has failed. But there are others who will say the program has been relatively successful. Maybe not as it should be, but the program is a good vehicle that can be used to change narrative in the Niger-Delta. We sat down for a conversation with one who should know because he was there at the initial stages of the program and he has kept tabs on the program all the while till now that he's at the helm of affairs. Newsnight sat for a conversation with retired Major General Barry Nomu, interim administrator of the Presidential Amnesty Programme.
General Nomu, thank you so much for speaking to us on this night. You are one quintessential soldier who spent your life serving the nation. Can you just take us a little bit down the journey, your journey as a soldier, before we even get to what you're doing here and what's been like?
Well, my journey as a soldier started a very long time ago. I spent approximately 37 years in the Army. I rose to the rank of Major General, retired. Incidentally, I'm also a lawyer. I read law, having read law at the University of Ibadan. Was called to the bar a very long time ago, way back in, I believe that was 97, 98. So, like I said, I've come a long way with enormous experiences in various fields, theaters. I've served in Liberia, served at the United Nations Angola Verification Mission in Angola, served in ECOMOG, and held various appointments right across from command to staff appointments. I was an instructor at the Nigerian Defense Academy for about 5 years, before eventually holding various key staff appointments at Army Headquarters level as the HQ Garrison Commander, and then also Chief of Training and Operations at the Defense Headquarters before exiting the Army after 37 years. 37 years, yeah.
That's 7 years of giving to your country, and you've been giving to your region now. You give to the country in general, and in like a year plus, you've been giving to the region. So talk to us about this journey of serving the region in the Presidential Amnesty Program.
Well, the Presidential Amnesty Program has been a whole new experience altogether because to be honest, yes, I was aware of the militant activities across the Niger-Delta. At some point in time, I followed up on the developments that led to the establishment of the Presidential Amnesty Program. And of course, the intention was to rein in the ex-agitators with a view to providing a conducive environment for oil exploration and oil production activities. And by the grace of God, that I think has been largely achieved. There's relative peace across the Niger-Delta today. And I personally believe that the program has been very successful in that regard. We might have a few isolated cases here and there, but largely, by and large, the Presidential Amnesty Programme has served its purpose.
In serving that purpose, there are those who would argue that if indeed it served its purpose, how is it then that at a certain time in years, there's been sort of like a spike in oil theft, which is supposed to have been curbed with the existence of the Amnesty Programme?
Yeah, that's a very good point you have raised. Let me, for the benefit of our audience also, incidentally, I was also the chairman of the Special Investigative Panel to investigate crude oil thefts, pipeline vandalization. And that experience exposed me to quite a number of things. First of all, it's a very whole complex situation out there. Issues bordering on crude oil thefts, to be honest, I do not believe have much to do with those who had agitated for resource control for which the Amnesty Programme was established. This is a very well organized crime by actors that cut across all sectors, probably even retired workers from the oil industry. Of course, you might have a few of the locals involved and other international collaborators. So it's a lot more complex. And like I said, it's a very well-organized crime. And I believe that if government looks seriously at some of the recommendations we made, we probably might be able to bring an end to it.
We'll come back to this matter of crude oil theft and what you're able to discover, but let's just step back a bit and look at the Amnesty Programme. You said it served its purpose, and there are some who say it's an intervention program that should have been wound down. So how is it that it's still running?
Yeah, there are several reasons for that. First of all, yes, you're right, it should have been wound down, but there were certain set objectives which have not been accomplished completely. For example, we have the vocational training centers, which are strewn across various states of the Niger-Delta. The idea behind establishing these vocational training centers is to provide skills to the youths, the restive youths across the Niger-Delta. Now, it will interest you to note that none of these vocational training centers have been completed. Now, we have initiated discussions with government with a view to ensuring the completion of these vocational training centers. And the reason is, if we are able to complete these vocational training centers, it then means we can domicile training of these restive youths within the region, and therefore we will be able to get them gainfully employed, particularly in the oil industry. Now, the vocational training centers are intended to provide expertise in various fields. For example, the one that is supposed to be in Ondo State, Agadagba, to be precise, supposed to provide skills in the area of oil and gas. Because oftentimes when you interact with the oil companies, they will tell you that the reason why many Niger-Deltans have not been employed in their stable is because they don't have the requisite skills to work in the industry. Now, if we have a functional vocational training center that will provide skills in oil and gas-related activities, then we would have been able to deal with that aspect of the problem. And then, of course, the other ones which were established in places like Bomadi in Delta State is supposed to deal with energy-related skills. There's yet another in Boro Town in Bayelsa State, and another which is supposed to meant to train deep sea drivers in Obama, Harristown in Rivers. Now, none of this has been completed, and I have been, since I was appointed, one of the things or efforts I have directed my energy at is to see how we can source for funds to complete these vocational training centers. Because, for example, if you look at the ages, the relative ages of the ex-militants, ex-agitators, whatever you want to call them, beneficiaries, what the main beneficiaries of the program, most of them are already in their 50s and what have you. So basically, you cannot be talking about a 50 years old man, 55 years old man coming to do any of these things. So we're now looking at capturing those youths across the Niger-Delta who are young and vibrant, and some of whom are already graduates, but unemployed. And now they could equally also acquire these skills and make themselves employable and useful to the society.
You said they're uncompleted. Is it mostly uncompleted or just portions completed in portions? Like, I do know, if I recollect clearly, the one that Gadaba, for instance, doesn't have a hostel.
Exactly.
But the building itself, the classes are all there.
Now, that is only with Agadagba.
Okay.
In Agadagba, the administrative building is there, but it has not been equipped. Neither have the hostels been built or completed. For those that they started, they're in some state of, in fact, as a matter of fact, what our assessment and evaluation has come up with Agadagba, it will probably cost you not less than 5 billion to have it completed right now. Ditto for the one in Bomadi, Harristown, and in Bayelsa, Borough Town. So it's quite a capital-intensive thing, and we do not receive any capital grants. You know, we're basically a recurrent run outfit.
You know these things. The people that this program is meant to manage, how have you been able to relate to them, working with them? As you said, some of them are aged. They have children. They'll probably be looking for, okay, I'm not doing anything. I've stopped the negative, the bad. So how do I survive? How do I take care of my family? How have you been handling?
Right. Now, one of the cardinal aspects of responsibilities of this program is to provide empowerment to the beneficiaries of the program. And now, this was one of the things I looked at, and that led me and my management team to come up with the idea of a presidential amnesty cooperative scheme. Because like you rightly mentioned, they have aged. The best you can do for this category of persons is to provide them with the requisite financing to carry out various businesses, encourage them to become entrepreneurs, so on their own, they could survive, you know. Now, the point here is, it doesn't have to be them. If they're probably not interested in these businesses, it could be their wives, it could be members of their family. And so that way, and so far, I can assure you, we have had several programs. We've gone out to evaluate some of the small-scale businesses that have been established by these men and women. And largely, I think the program has been a success.
What's the guarantee? Because this is not the first time we've heard about cooperatives in the Niger-Delta region or Niger-Delta program as a case. So what's the guarantee that this should be any different?
It is very different because our evaluation teams have gone out. We've seen businesses that they have established. And you may not be aware, but we also have consultants in the cooperative that have guided them in establishing these businesses. And the reports I have received, some were aired. I don't know if your television station was one of them. We have evaluated them and we have seen the successes that have been recorded by these individuals who have benefited so far from the loan and grants given to them by the Presidential Amnesty Cooperative.
And what about the payments? They're looking to pay back.
Yes, they are definitely looking to pay back because the modalities have been set out there, but they have a period of moratorium, so it will enable them to grow their businesses and to a certain point where they begin to make whatever profits, and then we hope that it will just be based on single-digit interest rates. And
General, this matter of the ex-agitators and what they're doing and how they're living, it's anytime it's heard across the country, some will go like, please, these people here belong to the nation. Now they are benefiting off the nation. But you see that this organization is not even as funded as it should be to even cater to it. So let's look at some of the things that came from that Amnesty Programme. The NDDC. How functional is the NDDC? Is it doing what it's meant to do as it concerns the Amnesty Programme? Because it's an option of the Amnesty Declaration by former President Yar'Adua. So how is that working out? The relationship between the Amnesty Programme and the NDDC?
You would realize that the Niger-Delta has been very quiet lately. I want to assure you that one of the major reasons is a presidential amnesty cooperative scheme. Otherwise, a situation where these boys have not probably received their allowances up until, in the new year, up until the 15th of February, 16th of February. In the past, there would have been protests and all kinds of violence across the streets. But the Parcosol loans to these boys have kept them calm. And that should tell you that we are recording significant successes. Yes, successes. Well, if the government had not provided us the funds, we wouldn't have been able to do all of this. So we must give credit to government equally. But I also think that we can harmonize and synergize our efforts so that way we'll be working together and probably also assisting each other. For example, I believe there's quite a lot the Amnesty Programme can benefit from the local content board. In the same way, I believe there's so much we can get from the NDDC, in addition to our own resources, whatever we can provide, and we'll begin to make significant progress in all directions.
When we talked about oil theft, crude oil theft, like I said, we'll come back here. So I asked this question to tie into the level of crude oil theft, because the news out there, and in many quarters, that it is these men and women who have tasted this kind of lifestyle that are being used, I choose to use that phrase carefully, they're being used to perpetrate these kind of atrocities against the nation.
I believe that is absolutely incorrect.
Okay.
And I'll explain a few things right away. First of all, who is assisting government and the security agencies right now to curb the incidents of crude oil thefts and pipeline vandalization? It's a man who himself was at the forefront of these violent agitations. And he's doing that, playing that role very successfully. All right? So the issue of crude oil theft is a much more complex issue. You must understand that the theft of crude occurs at various levels. You have the insertions into the major trunk crude oil pipelines. You have those who are taking it out of the wellheads, whatever state those wellheads might be in, either abandoned, disused, or whatever. And those ones lie further down in the creeks. So you will agree with me that some of those insertions are not things that can be done by people who just walk on the streets. It requires sophisticated technology. It requires people with enormous amount of finances. And some of our studies have revealed that these individuals are either people who had worked in the industry, were laid off, or voluntarily left even on their own to join these vandals. So basically, it's a very well-organized crime. And I tell you, it has nothing to do with these ex-agitators, absolutely nothing. It is possible that you might have one or two or three or a few who may have been co-opted because, I mean, for them also it's a means of livelihood. But I can assure you that those who are involved in pipeline vandalization probably account for less than 1% of the so-called losses you are referring to. The big players are the ones who do those things in their hundreds of thousands of barrels. and you must be adequately resourced to do things like that.
As you were the chairman of that panel,
Yes, please.
in the investigations that you carried out, what were your findings? Is it possible that we could ever end crude oil theft in Nigeria? Because apart from the revenue loss, the region, the Niger-Delta region, is being destroyed more per burning of vessels, per capture of whatever containers are being stolen. Of course, security agencies will burn them.
Yes, to be honest, I agree with you, and I believe that it is possible to bring it to an end. There has to be the will to do that. It is not anything complex, neither is it rocket science. There are various strategies. We have put our recommendations together that can be employed to bring this to an end. For example, you would have to stop it, through the introduction of certain measures. All the tributaries, estuaries, and what have you open up to the sea at various points. If we take a simple statistics of the number of those outlets, I think we can effectively organize teams that can block them. There's technology, and there's so many other things we can combine alongside. What a lot of people don't understand is to fill up a cargo of crude, for example, it takes weeks. It takes weeks. It's not something that is done overnight.
Picture is painted as it happens like.
So if it takes weeks, then it means that there's substantial collaboration by all kinds of elements. I don't want to go into name calling. And you cannot tell me that if there's adequate surveillance of our maritime environment, that we wouldn't be able to detect those that are within that environment.
Don't we have enough surveillance right now?
Well, we do have, but is it properly coordinated? Have we properly harnessed them? Is the issue here, and there might be the need to create a separate organization to deal with this, and I can assure you, it can be brought to an end.
Okay, so talking about creating another organization, so to speak, I'm not too clear how they function, but we know that states like the US have the Coast Guards. They have the Navy, they have Coast Guards. Do we need something of that nature?
You see, I personally do not,
Working to ensure that we don't have duplication of functions, that some say we have a lot of in Nigeria.
Yes, that's why I've always said, we do not need to duplicate these things. When I talked about a separate, distinct organization, it could then mean that we'll have elements from all of those who are responsible for securing the maritime environment to be included in this new organization. Because you see, all of these, at the end of the day, have to do with leadership and the structure that you are creating. So you're not bringing in anything new to the table. You are using the existing structures, having them coordinated and synergized in such a way to ensure their effectiveness. Because you see, when you have different institutions and different bodies acting at cross purposes, you will never be able to achieve the overall objective. For example, you all can see the confusion existing at the moment between certain elements who are supposed to be involved in crude oil or pipeline surveillance and crude oil thefts. There's no unity of purpose. So you would always end up in this state of confusion. But if you fuse their efforts and bring them under an umbrella with a leadership that is dedicated to whom they all answer to, you would have a different outcome.
You talked about a unique organization that could be put together, drawing from all the elements that are now functioning to see to the end of crude oil theft and clean up that area. But the Presidential Amnesty Programme was meant to curb armed agitation. And so there are worries that Is there a guarantee that we will not have armed agitation returning to the region? Indeed, some argue that crude oil theft is actually a form of armed agitation against the activities or inactivities of government. So, can the Amnesty Programme guarantee a no recurrence of armed agitation in the region?
Now, let me answer your question this way. First of all, the issue of disarmament was not very successful. It was not 100% successful. I want you to bear that in mind. There were armed groups that refused to surrender. They did not accept the Amnesty Programme. And those armed groups still exist as we speak. It's a different matter altogether how government intends to deal with that, because there are options to deal with things like that. You either negotiate or forcefully disarm them. And so those groups still exist across the Niger-Delta. The Presidential Amnesty Programme was established to deal with those that disarmed and demobilized. And so I cannot say right now that we are responsible for those who did not disarm. And you can see from the activities across the Niger-Delta, you'll hear various armed groups rearing their heads from time to time. It is not something I need to educate you about. Now, talking about a resurgence of activities of the kind we had in the past of militant activity, there are no guarantees, to be honest. Because if these armed groups still exist, then there's a possibility that we could revert to that kind of situation. However, we on our part will continue to do our best through the various programs that have been established. And that is why we have the various scholarship schemes, which have been significantly successful. We have graduated thousands of ex-agitators who are now graduates. Many are gainfully employed. Many have found various businesses, other forms of entrepreneurship to keep themselves going. And I do not believe that such individuals who are today living very well and comfortably will want to resort to crime. And again, like I said, that is why we are insisting that the vocational training centers should be completed so that these young ones who are probably not gainfully employed can acquire the relevant skills to get themselves employed. And we have also introduced the cooperative scheme, which I also mentioned to you earlier, has been largely successful. That's provided them the microcredit to do certain basic things which have kept them going. So, to that extent, I can guarantee that those ones are not likely to go back to criminal
activities. What about the matter of employment for these ones who have, we talked about many graduated scholarships, they graduated, but the question of employment, no jobs. Of course, we all know that the government cannot provide all the jobs. So how is that being worked out so that they are not forced into crime because they don't have jobs? That's one thing. Then there is another argument also that it's because of poor governance. And my friend and I will tell you that it's because the local governments are not allowed to function, are not functioning. That's why we will have poor governance in Nigeria. Is the Amnesty Programme considering that as well? Working with the local governments, the councillors to say, how do we get these people employed? Easy.
Yes, like I said, you see, some of these things you are saying cannot just be done entirely by the Presidential Amnesty Programme. Would require a combination of diverse efforts. You see, there are different tiers of government. You have mentioned the local government we've talked about. You have also the state governments. These ex-militants are from different states. So the state governments also have a responsibility to their indigents, all right? And they should equally be interested in what we are doing here, so that we're not working at cross purposes, so that we can synergize and harmonize our efforts towards the common goal and objective. And that is why, like I said, we are doing the best we can. We are providing them with skills, we are educating them. We have just graduated pilots recently from South Africa. Over 45 of them have qualified as flight engineers, aircraft engineers. We're doing quite a lot. We're helping them set up businesses through the cooperative scheme. But all of these efforts will still have to be complemented by deliberate policies, by the states and local governments, and other institutions like the NDDC, which you mentioned earlier, and the local content board. And I believe that if we're able to harness and harmonize our efforts, we'll get somewhere, and there'll be relative peace across
Nigeria. The question of perception. I mean, when some people hear that, Delta is an ex-agitator, would they want to employ me, even if I graduated with a first-class degree?
Yes, you're probably right. But then again, these are gentlemen now. I mean, whatever they were in the past was in their past. You need to relate with these boys. They are some very intelligent young men and women, to be honest. And for those of them that have embraced various forms of businesses, and they are doing exceedingly well. You would never even believe that they were ever ex-agitators. And that is why we no longer refer to them as ex-agitators or militants. They are our delegates, so that we are able to remove that stigma, which will cause a scare by potential employers. Yeah.
Why the Amnesty Programme is to rein in armed militancy, to give room for development. Would you say development has come to Nigeria?
Well, like I said to you earlier, it is probably one of the reasons why this program cannot be terminated just now, because most of the reasons for which it was established have not actually been done. The training of the boys have not been completed. It's still ongoing. If you recall, a total of about 30,000 was captured. Then we had the other individuals who were co-opted into the program by virtue of the fact that their breadwinners had been killed in the course of the struggle. So if you put the figures together, if they exceeded the 30,000 number, we have gone over 3/4. We have probably less than about 7,000 yet to be trained. And until you complete and conclude the training for this balance of 7,000, you cannot say you have successfully or completely achieved the purpose for which the program was established.
One of the things that we say is a challenge with this program is also the question of management, and you talked about it, the way the program has been run. You're here. There's no guarantee you'll be here tomorrow.
Exactly.
But let's just say this. What do you think should be done differently? Of course, I was going to ask you, what are your plans? What have you put out there that you're going to see done in the next 1-2 weeks? But also, what should be done differently? If yesterday was so horrible, the man who sat here yesterday was horrible, didn't do a good job. You're here and you're going forward. So what should be done differently?
Well, everybody who has served here has done his or her own bit, to be honest. For example, Kingsley Kuku trained people in their thousands. As a matter of fact, the scholarship scheme we have just rounded up was initiated by Kingsley Kuku. Unfortunately, it was suspended by somebody else, and then my predecessor came and set up the boot camps to revamp the program, which I have subsequently continued and concluded more or less. It's still in the process. I think we have the last set of helicopter pilots who will be graduating in a couple of weeks. So, continuity was the problem. Now, but my predecessor came and set it back on course. I was able to maintain the momentum, and even the scholarship scheme, he reinstated. I continued with it. For example, at the time I resumed, we had about 3,000 plus applications which had been considered by him. In fact, and the scholarships awarded, but they were not paid for, all right? Because he was in the course of that when he left, he was removed. I did not come in and say, suspend the scholarship scheme. I took it on and paid for the entire 3,000 plus students. And I'm happy to say today that more than 1,000 have already graduated because many were in the bracket of master's degrees and so on and so forth. So it was just like a year. And it is this kind of continuity that was lacking before DQ was appointed. But we have been able to correct that from his administration to mine, and we've put the whole thing back on course. And I believe whoever is succeeding me should be able to continue from wherever I stop. Yeah.
What do you think would keep that vision? Because you have, as you said, you've picked up some things from your predecessors, some governors, they say they continue.
Yeah, exactly.
And you built this. You're graduating a few helicopter pilots in the next few weeks. That's fantastic. And hopefully they will be employed. But there are many more out there. At one time, I don't know if I remember correctly, General Bubamara was quoted as saying, those between the age of 12 and I think 35 have a higher propensity for drug use and abuse. And these ones need to be captured before they are lost. So we know that in the Niger-Delta region, we have this number of people. What can be done?
Exactly. You see, what you have just said is the primary reason why I have initiated all of those contacts and discussions that are ongoing with the relevant authorities in the present administration. It is because of this bracket of individuals you're referring to. If, for example, we have these vocational training centers up and running, adequately financed, we train the instructors in relevant institutions abroad. Take, for instance, today in Nigeria, you barely can find someone who can come and help you put up a building with a straight wall. I mean, this is ridiculous. People have to go and import masons, artisans, and what have you from Togo, Benin Republic. If you ask people on the streets of the Niger-Delta, there are hardly any Niger-Deltans that have the capacity to do any of these things, not to talk about those ones that are required to work in the oil industry. I mean, all the activities around us in the Niger-Delta is focused on the oil industry and generally the maritime sector. We do not have people with the basic skills to deal with all of this. And these are means of employment that we're just wasting. Now you have people coming from other geopolitical zones to take up these jobs. So if we have these vocational training centers up and running, they'll be able to train both graduates and non-graduates. They'll be able to capture these young ones. Not everybody has to go to a university, for example. Not everybody. Yeah. These guys can go in there, pick up certificates that are recognized. For example, when I came in, we decided to collaborate with NIDA. As I speak to you, we have about 800 plus young men and women that are running various programs in NIDA. Now, what is the whole idea behind that? They are all Niger-Deltans. Is to make them self-reliant. And you need to see the successes that we are recording. And these guys are receiving Microsoft certified certifications for whatever expertise they're acquiring through the NIDA program. This is the sort of thing that we intend to achieve with the vocational training centers across the Niger-Delta.
But that's when they are completed.
When they are completed.
So what happens until they get completed?
Well, we're working towards it. I want to assure you that depending on how long I have left here, if I have 2 more months left here, I want to assure you that the completion of those structures will commence.
Again, there's so much to talk about in the Niger-Delta that one begins to wonder, where do we start? Here we've been talking oil, but the Niger-Delta was known for agriculture, right, before the discovery of oil and labor. Besides that, also, there are also some solid minerals. I had a conversation with the Minister of Solid Minerals, and he mentioned some of the solid minerals we have in the Niger-Delta. Is that also being looked at? Do you think that might also become a problem like oil is, unless something is done in the area of government?
Yeah, I'll also lend my voice to that. You see, well, I don't know much about the issue of solid minerals, but I can speak in terms of agriculture. For example, you know, a lot of studies have been undertaken. Our terrain is largely similar. There's a lot of similarity with what you have in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, which are the largest rice. So, rice, yes. Now, this is something we need to have looked into in the Niger-Delta. And we should be feeding the nation, and probably the sub-region or even Africa, but that we have ignored. You know, we in PAP initiated some collaborative effort. We've gone with ITA. They're willing to collaborate with us. Like I said, if we have the kind of resources, there's so much that could have been done by now. But all of these, like I said, have been part of the planning that we have done. We have memorandum of understanding with communities where studies have taken place for rice cultivation. And so all we needed, which I hope maybe whoever will succeed me here will probably carry on from where I have stopped, because all the studies have been concluded. All we require now is to mobilize and get these farms in place.
Is there a mentorship program going so that we see those who have gone through educating the younger ones so they don't do that?
Yeah, that comes under the auspices of the stakeholder engagement scheme. We have stakeholder managers. We do initiate workshops constantly where they are able to interact among themselves. We invite resource persons to also come get involved, and leadership, various forms of leadership programs are put in place. Like I said, coupled with what we are doing with the cooperative scheme, others are being made to understand what progress has been made by those who have accessed the scheme. Of course, there's a lot of impatience also from all these boys. They think that everybody should be a beneficiary at once, but we try to make them understand that it's a process, coupled with the fact that we do not have sufficient funding to do these things, so we'll have to go gradually. And of course, the mentorship thing is a continuous process, so I think we'll...
Would this gradual process also cover you mentioned 7,000 that are yet to be trained, or is it a different plan for this one?
Yes, no, it's like I said, it's a process. Even the 7,000 that are yet to be trained, we're evaluating them to get to understand who amongst them and what type of training would they require. You know, because, for example, like I said, when you look at the relative age of these boys, some have already in their 50s. Are we going to start teaching a man who is 55, 56 years old to become a welder? Does it really make sense? Could that really be the best option? Why don't we interact with him through these sessions we're having, stakeholder engagements, to determine what exactly he wants to do, which is what we've been doing anyway. And then that way we know if it's better for him to become an entrepreneur and what type of entrepreneurship. We have the consultants to guide him And I think largely we have achieved some positive results.
So if you had a word for the Niger-Delta region, the people of the Niger-Delta, the young, the old, those in government, those outside of government, what would that word be?
Well, first of all, there's a lot one would have to say. I am of the opinion that the respective state governments of the Niger-Delta need to take on their governance responsibilities more seriously. What do I mean by that? Government in the first instance is meant to cater for the needs of their people. And I believe that that's why we have the state governments and also the local governments. They must take their responsibilities much more seriously by ensuring access to education for the children and youths across the Niger-Delta. They must also take responsibility to ensure that those who are educated are gainfully employed. I believe these are the basic responsibilities of government. Now, if you look carefully across Nigeria, one of the reasons why we have a lot of these pockets of crisis across Nigeria is because of the failure of government at the state and local government levels. Children who have not been afforded the opportunity of being educated, unemployment, of course it leads to unemployment, and even youth unemployability. So it's a twin thing. If you are not educating them, then please provide them with the skills so they do not become useless to society. And I think these things are absent in some of these states, and that is why we have this upsurge of crime across Nigeria. It shouldn't be left to PAP, the Presidential Amnesty Programme. The Presidential Amnesty Programme was and is an ad hoc arrangement. It should not become a permanent institution in our society. It is an ad hoc arrangement that should come and help you solve or ease a problem from where thereafter the state governments and local governments should take over.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And as they say, some good things do have to come to an end at a point, and this is that point where we say, thank you for letting us be a part of your day. It's been an interesting conversation. What's your thought about this? Do you have any comment? Our handles are right there on your screen. Send us a tweet, send us a mail, and on our YouTube channel also send a comment. We would really appreciate your comment. But also know this, that you can catch up with this particular episode and other episodes of the program via our website, channelstv.com/podcast, or even on our YouTube channel, Channels Web. Just go there and click on the playlist, and you'll see this program. Watch it, and let us know what you think. Till we'll bring you another edition of the program. This is us saying bye-bye.